Hello, everyone, and welcome to this 11th episode of the Gaming Garden podcast, where we discuss everything related to farming games. I'm your host, Josh, and this week I'm joined by two game developers from Rainy Games, the studio behind SunnySide. So I have Rainy and Fem with me. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, my name is Siavash, aka Rainy from Rainy Games, and I'm the original developer for SunnySide. But then Sydney joined to give everything some order and actually get the game done. So.
Everybody needs a producer. I'm Sydney. I go by Fem Chef too. You'll see me on both everywhere, and I'm the technical owner of Rainy Games. I'm also producer and million other hats. Keep things turning. Keep everybody moving along. Keep him in line.
And the writer for SunnySide, narrative.
And the writer,
director.
yeah.
Right. Oh, nice. Yeah, there's a lot of that. You did a lot of writing because it's quite a story-driven game.
10,000 words, I think.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
that is a lot.
210.
Yeah, and would you mind telling us a little bit more about how Rainy Games was formed? I know Rainy, you're the founder. How did you two meet each other, and how did SunnySide
That's a
start?
fun story. Yeah. So SunnySide actually started as a mobile game. I was still in the university at the time, and money was running short, and my parents couldn't really support me as much as they would have been able to. So I grew up with farming games. One of my favorite games of growing up was Harvest Moon: Save the Homeland, which is a little bit of a niche one, but I love that one. This is back in like 2020, 2019. Yeah, 2019 actually. And the mobile scene didn't have a lot of cozy games. Stardew Mobile was the go-to, so I was thinking of making a mobile game. So I did a Kickstarter for a mobile SunnySide, and it failed. I think we got like £50 from the 5,000 goal, and it just wasn't successful. So I gave up on that, and COVID happened, which meant I lost the job that I had at the time. And I just worked on SunnySide as a form of escapism, really, because the reality was really bleak. So I would just sit down and work on SunnySide all day. And I remember I did a post on Reddit that went quite viral that made me think maybe there's time to do another Kickstarter campaign, but this time for PC. I was lucky enough that at the time, Over Magica and Coral Island were also running a Kickstarter. So everybody also saw SunnySide as a part of that. And Sydney was a backer of SunnySide.
Yeah.
I'll let you explain how you messaged me.
Yeah, I actually backed. I backed a lot. I backed Coral Island. I backed SunnySide. I backed Sandrock. I didn't back Ova. I came in late on that one. But yeah, I was finishing up a degree in industrial and organizational psychology, and I was bored. It was COVID. I was looking for something to do, and I had come from the culinary industry originally. So I was looking at all these farming games that were talking about having cooking systems and stuff. And I was like, I could do that. I could help design something like that. So I messaged actually a few of them. I messaged SunnySide. I messaged Coral Island. I messaged Sandrock. And I was just like, hey, I've got this experience. If you guys want any help with, creating menus and stuff, I have experience with R&D. And Rainy was the only one that responded. Actually, that's not true. Coral Island responded too, but they were like, we're not going to be touching this for like another year, so we're not really sure. I was like, okay, well, hit me up when you need help. And then they didn't, because I had a job by that point. So that's how I originally started, and then kind of started looking into what he'd planned out already, and I realized that he hadn't really fleshed out the crops and like what the crops were going to be, and I couldn't do the food without the crops, and I couldn't really do the crops without knowing other things. So I kept poking him for information. I was like, where are we at with all this stuff? And he was like, well, we're still kind of designing it. And I was like, I want to help. And so I just kind of took over.
Yeah,
that is so nice. It's actually quite inspiring how you just reached out and you ended up working together. So it's worth shooting your shot. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just happened to have skills that he didn't, and that he had it, and it just kind of fit. He needed a writer. I had writing experience. He needed somebody to help with designing. I had good ideas. So I took over as community management at first, and then I kind of worked into production, and then I worked into design, and Then he got me an engine, and I started actually doing
Yeah.
stuff in engine, and now it's
Quite a few people on the team actually joined because they asked. I mean, our
almost
composer,
everybody.
yeah, almost
Yeah.
everybody. Our composer,
Mm.
Jelly Fox Matt, he, I mean, one of the highlights of our game is the soundtrack, and he messaged me on Reddit at the time. I did get messages from other composers as well, but his was the one that kind of
We still
stuck.
get
And then,
messages from composers.
Oh yeah.
yeah. Which, you know, I would say don't annoy devs, but no, honestly, go for it, because
Do
Go
if
for
it.
it.
it's
Yeah, do
working
it.
Yeah.
out,
That's a great
Yeah.
lesson. So how many
Ken
people
reached out to
yeah.
us. Yeah.
How many
lot of
people do you
people.
have on
Sorry.
your team working on SunnySide in total?
That's a hard question.
yeah.
Technically,
We did actually talk
right
about this
now,
before the
yeah,
podcast. Yeah,
Mm.
trying to figure out what the answer would be.
technically right now, 2.
Mm.
Yeah,
it's the 2 of us. We have about 6 people, 7 people who have been with us throughout the entire production of SunnySide for the whole like 3 years. And then there are 7 or 8 other people who were like half of it. So, but in terms of the actual studio, it's just Rainy and I, and then we pull in contractors as we need them. So, you know, we've brought in modelers, and we've brought in Matt's technically contractor doing the music and stuff. So, well, no, I forgot Erica. So technically, right now we're 3. We have a community manager, QA person who's with us right now. So, so yeah. So at our smallest, 2 to 3. At our biggest, I think we were at like 16. So,
I see.
but our credits are huge. The credits for the game are enormous.
Because you have your publisher as well, so I guess there's a lot of people from there. Yeah. So before we get too much into the game, that's going to be the core of the episode. We have lots of things to talk about of relating to SunnySide. I want to know more about the development. I want to know more about the game, which just got its console launch in the last week. At the end of the episode, we will cover some news. So unfortunately, we have some sad news regarding Fantasy Life that got delayed again. There's also another very exciting game that just got announced yesterday. So we'll talk about all of that. But first, I know you're so busy with game development, but I'm wondering if you have some free time and what kind of game you're playing recently.
Yeah, I mean, my therapy game is Euro Truck Sim, which is it's great. I mean, a lot of people know about it. It's just a truck simulator. I play the Euro one. There's an American one as well that you can play, but I just like the European trucks more. And then I just put some music on and I just drive through, or a podcast. It's so therapeutic to me. This counts as a cozy game. It's great.
I agree. This is such an underrated cozy game. I feel like people in this community don't talk enough about this game. And it often goes on sale for like $2, $3, $5 on Steam.
Really?
Yes, the DLC is expensive though. So you buy the game, which is quite cheap, and then you end up being tricked into buying all the DLCs for like new maps.
Reminds me of Planet Zoo.
Yeah, yeah.
Buy all the expansions and stuff.
Yeah,
but yeah, Euro Truck came out in 2012, and
wow.
they're still updating it. They're still supporting it. It's the devs are doing a good job of it. And yeah, I mean, I was playing it before moving to the UK in Iran, and I even bought a wheel for it, which does add quite a lot to the experience. It's great to just be, because like when I have the wheel, it's kind of weird. It's like a switch that goes off in my brain. I go into driver mode, and sometimes I want to turn. I just look to the side. And I'm like, oh no, wait, I'm playing on the computer. I'm not in the car.
It is so realistic. Yeah, I'm playing the American version. I'm playing quite a lot. Like you said, such a good game for like listening to a podcast or just turning your brain off and just like relaxing. And it's a fun way to travel for free and just see different sceneries, different environments.
I mean,
is there any story?
No, you just do deliveries, different contracts, and you like build your own business, but there's no story.
The loop is really simple. You just do deliveries, you get more money, you get better trucks, get equipment for the trucks, and you make more money.
Like simple loop.
Yeah, but I do like to maybe make a game one day where you do something like this, but it's not a truck, it's like a normal car, but you're traveling through the country, and you like every city you arrive at is like a new chapter of a story. So there's a lot of potential, and I haven't seen a game like that I would that I would love to play. But yeah, Euro Truck Sim. If you're looking for a game to turn your brain off, like Josh said, go for it. I recommend it wholeheartedly.
Definitely. And there is a little bit of driving in SunnySide. Well, I have the bicycle.
Yeah.
There are more vehicles you can unlock later, right?
Yeah, there's a moped and like a K truck.
Yeah, there's a K truck. Yeah, shout out to Charlie from Prismatica Dev for helping us develop those. Because I mean, Josh, you play a lot of cozy games. I was watching you play this one game. God, I don't remember the name of it, but it had like a track that would go around the map, and you could jump on a little bus looking thing that would go around.
Oh, that
a
was...
New Leaf Memories.
Yeah, New Leaf.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which
that
yeah.
game was horrible.
Yeah,
The bus
So
was
the reason
fun.
I'm bringing that up,
the bus was like the only good part.
That was the good part, yes.
That's why I remember it. Yeah, in a lot of games, the vehicle is just like a moving pawn, like your player is. But for SunnySide, what Charlie managed to do, which I was really happy for, it was actual like differentials and suspensions and stuff. So your vehicle can like look. It's not just like moving like this and then go up and come down. It will actually like tilt up and down. You can do jumps with it. You can do the physics of it is really fun. And people, funnily enough, one of the parts of the game that a lot of people enjoy, yourself included, is the crashing. Which is something that we didn't expect, but yeah, people love it. And yeah, it's great.
Bike crash simulator.
Yeah, especially in the previous builds of the game, it's not as crazy anymore. But when I played the demo, when you crashed with your bike, it would just go fly all over
when you would
the world.
Respawn it would like shoot you up into the sky. Yeah. We toned that one down, but you can still
I get it.
Spectacular
it was fun
crashes.
It was similar to another bug that we had a long time ago. I think during the alpha. Rainy, you'll remember this. The tree stumps had more physics on them. And so you'd chop down a tree and then you'd have the big log fall down, but the log had similar physics like the bike did. So if you stood on it and tried to do anything, it would launch you across the map. And we had a lot of fun with that. We had to get rid of it for obvious reasons, but it was enjoyable.
If you tried to climb it, so essentially the top part of the tree would be a physical object. And when you try to climb it, the game would attach you to whatever you're climbing so you can go atop it. And then when you would attach yourself to something physical, like the forces would start clashing and then it would just catapult you across the map. Yeah, that was. Wow.
I'd love to see that.
That's why you can walk through the logs, because like
physics are hard.
Problematic.
Physics are really hard.
Yeah, I can imagine physics must be so hard to manage, especially in a big kind of open world. It is a very ambitious game. I'm wondering, is it your first project of this scale or your first game?
Yeah, SunnySide is my first shipped game ever. I'm not actually, honestly, the stuff that I've worked on in the past has just been stuff like me with learning Unreal Engine and stuff like that. So this is the very first game, like proper game that both of us have worked on. And yeah, ambitious is certainly correct.
It's the difference between building a house out of a deck of cards in your living room and then going and building an actual house.
Yes.
Like,
it's quite a step up. Difference. Yeah. So was it scary? Why did you went from like a mobile game at first to this huge open world farming sim with lots of new ideas? Was it scary?
Oh yeah, the release of SunnySide when it was coming out on PC was probably the scariest experience I've had in my life. I'm not even exaggerating. I was like shaking the whole day, and the weekend was just freaking out and panicking. So yeah, certainly was a very scary experience. If I could go back in time, I would absolutely scale SunnySide down, because I personally overestimated how difficult some of the aspects of the game were. And I'll just be absolutely honest and clear about the fact that there are parts of SunnySide that I am not proud of. And I wish we wouldn't have done, and we would have just focused on the other aspects of it. Because when you play the game, you kind of get this whiplash. One part looks really polished, looks really fun, and then you just kind of come across something that just looks half-baked. So we definitely learned our lessons.
Can you tell us which part you're the caves,
the battling?
The caves,
would have
100%.
just completely removed the caves and the battling, and we would have instead put more time into making cooking more fun or
Yeah.
food crafting more interactive, which is actually the idea that we had originally. We had these machines that would actually have animations of like what is going on in them, but we had to kind of downscale all of that. And build mode, I mean, a lot of people kind of compared some of the aspects of the build mode to Sims, which is a huge compliment, but it could have been a lot better at launch.
We would have gone
like
further. Yeah.
you know, changing the pattern or material on something you're building. Imagine you put down a sofa. Sims 3, I'm sure you played Sims 3.
Yeah.
Had this
Everybody's favorite.
customization that you could customize anything with
Yeah.
any material and any texture. That is something I wanted to do, but ended up not having the time for it because I was working on other things like the battle system. So that is definitely one area I can say for sure I would have scaled down on.
I would have cut drone racing too, I think.
Yeah.
Completely. It didn't really end up being what we wanted it to be. But
it sounded like a fun idea, but it didn't really work its way too well into the story either, right?
Yeah. And we learned, I think if there's any one lesson we learned over the last 3 years, it's that the easiest part of making games is having really good ideas.
Yeah.
That's the easiest part. And the hardest part isn't just, okay, how do we do this? It's how much is this going to cost? Who's going to make it? How long is it going to take? How much effort are we going to have to put into it? And then once we do develop it, now we have to test it and then polish it. And then, so we set out to like, let's make a revolutionary farming game that tackles all of the things that people have complained about with farming games for a really long time. Let's do it. Let's do the stuff people want. And then we started getting into it and we went, okay, this is a lot. This is a lot more than even we were expecting. So there are whole systems that we had planned that we cut because we just knew it wasn't going to happen with all the other stuff that we wanted to do. And I think most game developers can say something similar, that you know, you always have ideas, but not everything's executable.
Yeah, exactly. Having the ideas is as like you said, the easy part, right? And I've no doubt you cut a lot of stuff. Do you think? I know you've been releasing patches and things like that. Are there things you want to polish and work on over time? Is there like, what is your main priority?
What's yours, Rainy?
Main priority, performance is one thing that a lot of people are complaining about, and it's not. We're not trying to cover it up or hide it or ignore it. We absolutely know the performance is horrible, especially on something like Steam Deck. It's just not running too well. The problem is I'm the only developer in Unreal Engine, and I've kind of reached the end of what I understand and know and what I can do when it comes to optimizing the game. So we are looking to, we're still just kind of talking about it, unfortunately, getting some extra help to help with the optimization and performance. But besides that, there are still bugs to fix. And probably the most important the biggest one for me right now is a new mode in the game called Sandbox mode. We know that there are people who really like the game, but the intro to the game can be very lengthy because it's very, very JRPG. You have tons of dialogues to go through. So we're trying to remove those barriers and also give you tons of customization options on what you want to do, like unlock everything on the skill tree, give you unlimited money, all the caves are open and accessible, no enemies. So just customizing the experience to something that you would enjoy yourself. So that's the biggest one for me right now. Is
similar to like Minecraft has that, right? Where you have like
creative
mode and you have creative mode. Yeah. We want to do kind of a creative mode for SunnySide. It was actually one of our Kickstarter.
It was one of our goals.
The extended goals. So we definitely want to do it. It's definitely on the list. For me, there are a couple systems that we ended up cutting for time that I still want to get in if we can. Fast travel being one of them. We had an idea for allowing you to fast travel between all of your own farms because you can get up to 4 farms. So having some kind of system that you can, hop around and make it a little bit easier to manage. We had another system that I really, really want that is basically seed starting with seedlings that Rainy's so sick of me talking about, but because I did most of the designing, the pre-production designing for the farming system. I'm sorry, guys. And so we really wanted to go with realism as much as we could. And so because you grow stuff, right, Josh? Like,
in real life, yes,
you can start. So one of the things you can do is start seeds in little seed starting trays in real
Yes.
life.
Yeah.
And then you can pop them out and go plant them. And we want to do something similar where you could like move plants from plots to plots. So I really want that someday. That's like on my wish list. But the way I figure it, very similar to like Stardew is, when Stardew launched, it didn't have nearly the amount of stuff that it has now. And so we kind of always want to do a similar route of like constantly adding new and more stuff that people will enjoy. So hopefully.
Yeah. I guess it's hard to find a balance, like, of not wanting to make your game feel bloated or overwhelming. Because for me, as much as I enjoyed my time with SunnySide at the beginning, it can feel like there's a lot to do. For example, when you open your phone to buy seeds for the first time and you see there's like 50 different crops and you're like, oh my gosh, where do I start? Like, which one should I buy? And then
we fixed that actually.
Oh yeah?
We made it so that
Added level systems to that,
yeah, there's 2 apps now that you have. There's actually SunnySeed and then there's the Plant Daddy app.
Okay.
And the Plant Daddy has all of the information so that you can use it as a reference point. But then SunnySeed itself has a rotating stock. And there are ways you can organize it too. So you can look at like what's available for spring for my specific level and in this plot size, and it'll narrow you down to like 4 or 5 things.
Oh,
yeah, especially
like
at the start
that crazy long list. Yeah, because it was overwhelming for people. So we were looking at ways to kind of calm it down a little bit. We also wanted to encourage people to buy seeds constantly. So it's rotating. So every day there's like a new group of stock that you
kind of wanted you to have to open
check it.
and check the app and see what's around. Actually, funny enough, I got the idea from Gran Turismo, which is a racing game.
Yeah.
But Gran Turismo has a 6-hour rotating shop. So every day when I open the game, I go and see what cars are available for that day. So it's like that could be a pretty cool system that could work well. But Josh, like you said, it's about striking the balance between bloat and keeping people interested. Because like, you can make the argument that, showing all these crops to people will make them want to grind to get them. But at the same time, it's too much. And it gives people, what is it called? Executive something? Where you can't make a decision when you have too many options in front of you.
Analysis paralysis.
Dysfunction. Yeah. Paralysis. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But we want to work on SunnySide as long as we can. And that can really comes to how long we can survive monetarily. And I mean, Sydney, if you want to add more to that, I'll leave that one to you.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a kind of a common misconception that like, game launches, developers are rich, they're getting all this money and, they're only going to put in time if they want to, and which is just not the case at the indie level. So like for us,
definitely not for us.
Yeah, definitely not for us, because it's all about like recoup and stuff with your publisher. So I can't really go into it because of contracts and stuff. But what I can say is so far RainyGames has not made any money off of SunnySide, even though we've been out for 2 months.
Yeah.
So that means that we're kind of looking for creative ways to make sure we can still keep paying the bills. So yeah, we'll keep going as long as we can, but there is going to be a point where it's like, how much time can we put in?
Yeah, I can imagine that must be so difficult, because on Kickstarter you got about 30,000 British pounds, right, from your campaign, which is, and you've been working on this game for multiple years, so it's not that much.
Kickstarter, after all the pre-orders and stuff, we were at about $60,000 US dollars.
Okay.
But if you look at, and then we also did get paid by the publisher to do the game. But if you look at, I mean, like you were saying, the game's huge.
Yeah.
And so for 3 people, up to 16 people for 3 years, you can do the math. If that's your only wage,
that's a lot.
How much money? And I think people don't realize when we talk about like games cost a lot of money to make, it's because we need a living wage to be able to put 9, 10, 11, 12-hour days into making them. So when we say it's expensive, what we mean is we're paying the person their living wage to make the game. And that's really where all the cost goes. There's some other stuff, but for the most part, it's just that. You figure 2 people at a, let's say, I don't know, 40,000 a year, you're looking at 80 grand right there just for 2 people for a year. So it gets expensive very quickly. Yeah.
I can imagine. And now the game just released on consoles, PS5 and Xbox Series X and S. So hopefully that helps. How has been the console launch for now?
Unfortunately, it's completely handled by the publisher.
Mm,
We had no access. Well, I don't want to say no access. We have communication with the porting team, and we push things to them that are fixed and stuff. But
And they grabbed the
after
PC
that,
and ported it, by the way. It
yeah,
wasn't something that we developed in house.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
So once we kind of do our PC stuff and pass it off to them, it's out of our hands. We had no way to test anything. We had no way to. It was all just them. So we didn't know how the game played until it launched,
Okay.
and we got
How
access
can I
to
ask?
it.
How does it play?
We've had a lot of reports. We'll just put
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah.
The main
Yeah.
thing is there are a lot of things that were fixed on PC with patches after launch that to no fault of the porting team, just for some reason just didn't get fixed.
Mm,
I don't know if we don't know yet if it was errors in like, so we use Perforce to like share files and stuff.
yeah.
And so we don't know if like maybe certain files just didn't get pulled properly, or if it was a Perforce errors, or if it was just development errors, or maybe Rainy not pushing things properly, because that can happen too. So we're not really sure. It's only been 2 days, so we're still figuring it out, but we're definitely going to be working closer with the porting team.
I'll just echo what I put in Discord, which is the fact that it was a very stressful weekend because, like Sydney said, because we don't have any dev kits or anything, we couldn't try the game out alongside the QA team from our publisher that was QAing it.
Yeah.
So it was very stressful to see bugs that either just never existed to begin with, or things that we had fixed like in a few patches before still be a thing in console version. So we did put out a statement right away saying that we are going to be working with them. And this week, I mean, we've been doing patches bi-weekly. We had to stop that for this week because we sat down and had a long discussion with the porting team trying to figure out how we can help them understand some of the aspects of the game that are still buggy. So yeah, I mean, all of our focus currently is going to help them, not directly working, unfortunately, because we can't, but helping them as much as we can to get patch out on PlayStation and Xbox. It definitely helped, like monetarily, because it's just more sources of the game to be sold on. So I hope that with the patches that would come out, it would make it smoother. And also, one of my friends always reminding me that there's less competition on console, and that's also a factor that would work in our favor when it comes to SunnySide being on PlayStation and Xbox.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add that we're always going to be the harshest critics of our home game.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we're talking about like, oh yeah, it's, there have been bugs and there have been some crashing issues and whatever, we've also gotten reports from people saying it's perfect. There's no problems. There are people who aren't having any crashes, or they're very limited, or they're not running into the bugs. So a lot of it, the hard part for us is like perception. Is like you can give two people the exact same thing. This person's going to love it. This person's going to hate it. We have no idea which one's which. So the only way we know is just by what people tell us. And we've gotten both sides of the entire spectrum. So people like it, people don't like it.
I'm sure there's a lot of people on each side. You pointed out competition. It is actually pretty amazing because we don't have that many indie games that come out on console that quickly after the PC version. So it just took you two additional months. So that's great. You were able to get it on console. And
I mean, they've been working for it since January. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. And I was wondering, how did you choose? Because there's so many games releasing, even like farming sims every week, every month. How do you choose a release date?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I
mean, do you want to take that, or do you want me to take that?
I'll give a tiny. Yeah, it's more of a production thing. Well, we do have again publisher decision, right?
Yeah, it's publisher decision.
So we do have it's not technically a marketing team. It's called what? Product management.
Product management.
Yeah. So what they do is that, from what I know, and I'll let Sydney kind of go a bit more into it, they look at other releases at the same time. Try to shoot for some time that there's not a lot of competition happening, but also try to see if there's any sales or anything up. And that's, by the way, Steam exclusively. If there's a sale up or an event or a game event up, and we can get some sort of marketing deal going on that our game can be showcased and launched that event, then that will be a very good goal. But that's as much as I know. What else, Sid?
There's actually a lot that goes into it. A lot of it is to do with obviously how's the game looking, so we technically finished production at the end of last year when we were done with the game. It was, everything was finalized, but then you go into the period of, okay, we got to test it, we got to fix bugs. It's the bugs that pop up. We went into play tests with our Kickstarter backers for a few months. And then, we also had an outside QA house who was doing testing on everything. So just because you finish doesn't mean you're finished, So and then it kind of comes to what we experienced was we kind of had like a scoring scale of how are people perceiving the game. And so every time we ran a playtest, we'd send out a survey of what did you think of this? What did you think of this? And we were kind of aiming for like a cumulative score of, okay, the game's ready. We think we're good to go. Once we kind of had the we're good to go, it kind of went back to what Rainy was saying was, we had a publisher, so they put a lot of market research into what's launching around this time on Steam. Are there any sales happening? Are there going to be any other things that are going to kind of compound? And it's funny because there was a lot of speculation about why we ended up doing PC first and then PlayStation, Xbox later. And people were, oh, it's to fix bugs or it's to do this. The only reason it was done was because there was a huge sale on PlayStation when we wanted to launch, and we didn't want to push PC back. So we separated them. That was literally the only reason, was there was a huge PlayStation sale and the publisher didn't want to compete with it. So that was it. It wasn't some crazy like
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
so I also thought it would have been to like just polish the console versions a bit more or something.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the benefit, right?
I mean, I'm glad it happened.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was literally just PlayStation was doing what's called a tentpole sale where they're putting a ton of stuff up, and publisher just didn't think that we could compete with it, which is fine. And it was probably true. And so, yeah. And you also look at like Rainy said, who else is releasing that day? And if they are releasing, are they in our genre? Is it direct competition? There's also release day sales. So Steam has a setup of you can only put your game on sale like so close to each other. You have to have gaps of time in between each sale. So if we wanted to be part of a sale later on in the year, we had to make sure there was a big enough gap between launch and the next sale. So for us, it was wholesome. So we had to time it so that we could be in the wholesome sale.
Yeah.
So whereas if we'd done it too close to that, we wouldn't have been able to do both. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it.
There is a lot that goes into it. You don't just pick like your favorite day of the month. You have to think.
I mean, that'd be great. We had talked about like let's doing a February 14th release. That was just something we talked about, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, that was like one of the early ideas.
The funny one for me was I'm going to out our publisher. Sorry, guys. Messaged me and said, hey, what do you guys think of a July 4th release? And I said, absolutely not. Most of our people are in America and nobody's going to buy games the weekend of Independence Day in the United States. It's not going to happen. So that was me. I was like, no, we're not doing that. But yeah, so there's some things that get considered. And that's why shadow releases are so dangerous. For us, I remember the whole time, Rainy can attest to this whole year, I was so stressed out about Stardew Valley because we knew 1.6 was coming out, but we didn't know when. And so we were trying really hard to avoid it at all costs, because if we had done it the same day, we wouldn't have made any sales.
Yeah, no.
So it was like,
I was playing Stardew that day. I was not.
Yeah.
I did not
So that's another, like, you just hope that nobody's going to shadow drop anything and everything's going to go well and you're not going to get drowned out by something else.
So the 1.6 ended up being like a few months. Was it like a month before your release?
I think it was. He was running patches pretty constantly.
Yeah.
So it did end up running into us. But we had actually wanted to release when he did 1.6.
Oh, okay.
And so thankfully he announced it early enough that we were able to go, okay, let's push. Let's avoid that. So but yeah, I was really stressed about it for the first like 4 months out of the year of like, please just tell us when this is happening so that we can plan our launch date and not have to worry about it.
That does sound very stressful. Hopefully, you had a good publisher to help you navigate this kind of like business side of things. And so, going to the game and the gameplay a little bit more, for those who are not familiar with SunnySide yet, how would you describe what do you think makes this game different from the plethora of other foreign games we have?
Everything.
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 Well, see, recently I have been trying to, well, both of us really, we've been trying to make sure to not necessarily say that SunnySide is a farming game. While it definitely has farming as one of the aspects of it and one of the main aspects of it, it's a lot more akin to a JRPG. So from the very beginning of SunnySide, the idea was to kind of bring in a more Persona JRPG elements into the farming genre again, especially on the indie scale. When you go back and look at some of the early Harvest Moon games, you can see the JRPG aspect a lot more kind of vividly than you do now, especially with indie releases. They don't really, not all of them are JRPGs. So we wanted to kind of add that kind of life sim aspect of like living in an anime to the farming and everything besides it. And a lot of people say modernized farming, which to a degree we're not so
Kind of. Yeah.
it's not going to have robots going around doing things for you, although we do have a robot. But but I say if you're a fan of Persona,
Yeah.
which means that you like good soundtrack, you like characters that have a lot of story. There's tons of dialogue. There's a lot of dialogue,
Yeah.
and you want it set in Japan, and you want there to be a farming aspect to it. Then SunnySide would be something that might worth your time.
I was doing conventions for the last couple of months. We did DreamHack, and I did another one called Anime Fest up in Dallas. And I kind of developed an elevator pitch for the game so that we could talk to people. And basically, what I was telling people was it's a JRPG slice of life game, and it's crossing Harvest Moon with Persona 5. That's really if you want it in a nutshell. Because I think what we learned when you say farm sim, there are things that people are expecting to happen because they've played all the other ones. They've played Stardew Valley. They've played, even Harvest Moon or whatever. And while we have a lot of those mechanics, with everything that we approach, like I was saying earlier, we would look at the system and go, okay, why is this here? What is the purpose of it? Can we modernize this? Can we make it make more sense for Japan? How can we make it more enjoyable for the player? So even just simple things like having a hose instead of a watering can, of like, how do we make this more current and something that people could actually experience in their own backyard, So, and I think that confused a lot of people, unfortunately, because you go in, when we say we have caves, actually, this just came up on our Discord. Somebody was asking where are the save points in the caves. And because that's how Stardew Valley does it, right? You get five floors down and then you have it saves. Whereas for us, the caves don't save until you leave them. So there is no like checkpoint or save point or anything like that. It's just however far you get, you leave, and then when you come back, you just kind of continue progression. So, and it's just that one tiny difference of what people expect from the genre versus how we implemented it, that you just kind of have to go in expecting nothing.
Yeah.
Really.
But honestly, I like how you really thought outside of the box. With this game, you can tell that you really try to like question everything you see in your typical farming sim, and that's what makes it feel so different from all of your other farming sims that mostly like play the same. So but yeah, it must be hard to find a balance between like making it familiar for people but also making it into your own
thing. See, like now the one thing I'm struggling with the most, and also I will give all the credit to Sydney for questioning every convention in the farming sim genre, because I wasn't the one to do that. I was when I was designing SunnySide for Kickstarter, my price reference for how much something should cost was literally the Harvest Moon, the old Harvest Moon on Nintendo 64. And I was looking at that and seeing how they kind of balanced everything and tried to kind of just copy it over to SunnySide. And when Sydney came in, she was like, okay, no, we are adding a decimal point and we are making everything feel like dollar. And I was like, oh God, that's that. And then it kind of worked out. But one thing that I wish I'm still trying to figure out how to do is to tell people that SunnySide is different, because a lot of people go in and a lot of negative reviews that we get is just people don't like in certain things, decisions that we made differently, or assuming something's in the game and complaining that it isn't. We have gotten negative reviews of people complaining that the dialogue choices you make don't make a difference in stories. Problem is, we never advertise SunnySide as a multiple choice game. Even your traditional farming sims, while they have character-based stories, they're mostly linear. You mostly just get the option to romance them or not, but that's as much option you get. The stories themselves are linear, and you go through them. So I don't know where that came from, but I'm still trying to figure out how to make it very clear what is in the game and what isn't in the game, so that we don't have people that go in expecting something and they don't. Even though we have a demo up, people just don't play it.
That's been the interesting thing, is not only putting out a game, but figuring out how to market it.
I guess that's a good way
because
to say it,
there's how we see the game, and we can describe it that way, but it doesn't mean that that's how people are going to interpret what you're saying. So, when we say, oh, it's a romance sim, because there's a romance system, and, you can go on dates and you get extra romance cutscenes and stuff. But the way that we viewed that was so different from player expectations. And so when we say it's a romance sim and you can date people are expecting something that is just completely different from how we ended up implementing it. And then it's like, okay, how do you go back and explain, okay, this is what it is, this is how it works. So it's the marketing part is hard, is you have to translate yourself.
That's why I don't say farming sim, I say JRPG with farming mechanics, because I think that gives us more of an open window to people, just to be a bit more open-minded about how different things might be. Because I don't know, when I say farming sim, I worry that we're giving people expectations that might not be in the game.
I think that makes sense. It's funny, earlier you mentioned the seeds a little bit, and just like you, I mostly played the Harvest Moon, Story of Seasons. So the first time I bought seeds in this game, I saw that the seeds were like $5 or something, and I just bought a lot, and I did not realize that in one packet there were multiple seeds, so I ended up with 200 seeds of
I call that the Sunny Seed tax that everybody has to pay the first time they play the game, and they learn very quickly. And I think it's hilarious.
Honestly. I was the very first person in the world to be shocked by that idea, because Sydney told me about it. And like you said, Josh, I also come from the traditional farming sim. So when she said that, I was like, no way, no, you're out of your mind. And then we did it, and then people... It's funny, the reaction we get is like, oh, okay, now I don't have to worry so much about buying seeds now. That's not such a money kind
of... The main thing for me and for us, with all the design elements, with the seeds, with a lot of, is I feel like a lot of the classic farming games and that classic loop ended up becoming more of a capitalism simulator of just let's make money and see how much money we can make, and that's the main focus. But to me, as an American, capitalism is so stressful. I don't want to think about that when I'm playing video games. I want to just chill and plant stuff. And so a lot of the decisions were, how do we pull the capitalism out of it and make it more relaxing? And the first thing that I took a look at was the economy, and how does the economy force you to get into this loop of making as much money as possible so that you can buy the seeds that you want the next season. And so with that one change of just making seeds cheaper, it was, now you can just plant the stuff that you want to plant. You can do it because of the aesthetics. You can do it because you want to see how this plant grows. You can do it because you want to see what things look like in raised beds, or you want flowers or whatever. And the benefit too is, because the system is so different, because it's a perennial annual system and not just everything dies at the end of the season, it allows you, the player, to learn through failure without being penalized monetarily for that failure. If you look at something like Stardew, a seed costs $300. If you lose that seed, it's devastating. For us, it's 30 cents and you just lost a few days. It's not as big of a loss. So, and in fact, I put that in the first conversation you have with Kat, where she teaches you how to farm. She tells you it's about learning, being okay with failure. Mm-hmm. And that was my message of like, you have to be okay with screwing up, because that's what the whole game is about, is trying stuff, testing the waters, see what works, what doesn't work, and explore, rather than just looking at a list and planning what's best and going to make you the most money. Because to me, that's just not as exciting.
Yeah.
So now, people still do that, and that's absolutely correct.
Yeah, which is fine.
That's fine. But yeah, that was the message. Yeah. Sorry, carry on, Josh.
Nice. So I guess you're going for more for a cozy, more relaxing experience than having to like worry too much about money.
Absolutely.
Our loading messages, literally, the reason they exist
slow
is
down.
That, yeah, just take
Relax.
a breather, slow down. Yeah.
And that's why we also like extended the days, so you can make the days up to like 60 minutes.
Now you can make them as long as an hour, which is crazy to me. I saw yesterday somebody on Discord was saying that 60-minute days are life-changing, and I was like, okay, if you guys enjoy it, it's a bit too long for me.
Me too.
But but if people want to take that long, then sure, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. There's more and more games that have this setting now to change the time. I think it is very convenient because everybody has different tastes. For me, I like very quick days. I like the time management aspect in these games, but some people really want to take it slow and just do things at their own pace.
Shout out to Portia that did it the first time.
Yeah, my time and Portia. Yeah.
Yeah. They did it the first time, and I remember it was an accessibility option that we wanted to do, but I was a bit scared at first. But it actually ended up being very easy to do. So I'm glad we did it because people love it. Yeah.
With SunnySide, you can go as low as 10 minutes. So you can do test yourself, do speed run time management days, or you can just chill out if you want to. I'm a 30-minute day person. The big thing, the reason it was so scary for me is even though we really badly wanted it, we weren't able to implement save any time just because of how everything works. And so to me, it's like, if you're making your days an hour long, you're taking a huge risk of like, if something happens, you're setting yourself up for an hour between saves. And to me, that's so risky. So I'm a 30-minute day type of person. So I don't lose too much time if something goes wrong, but
makes sense. Yeah. I was wondering if you could tell us more about the world. So this game takes place in Japan. And I was wondering, is it like a fictional Japan? Because you have lots of people with English names, some people with Japanese names. Their currency is not the Japanese yen. The name of the town is in English. So what's happening? What world are we in SunnySide?
I'm going to take this one because I'm going to lay all the blame on Rainy.
That's fair. Go for it.
So I came on midway through development, and when I came on, there were already like 6 or 7 characters that had been planned. And me as the new person, I wanted to respect everything that Rainy had done so far, so I didn't want to make too many changes. And so that's why you've got Kat and Gabe and Lucy and Natalie and Catherine, all these like very American names. And we were able to work into the story to make it make sense why they all have these types of names. But once I took control, we started doing the Japanese names. So it started to make a little bit more sense. But yeah, I would definitely say it's fictional Japan. We went, and that's actually a huge reason why we went with the fake currency.
Okay.
Because that was to establish like there's going to be some differences here. But at the same time, I wanted to be as true to Japanese culture as I could possibly get. So, I mean, we're talking years of research. I don't think there was a single moment on this game where I wasn't also researching Japanese culture and history and environment and architecture and every single thing I could get my hands on. You should see my YouTube channels that I follow. It's just like all Japanese content creators. And just trying to like, okay, what is this like? But And I mean, you also have, fictional robotic monsters that live in the caves under the town. So it's obviously not real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to also give some info why Japan to begin with. Like I said, I was trying to kind of capture the feeling and the atmosphere of
It's
some of
Harvest
the
Moon,
Harvest
yeah.
Moons I played growing up. So, Save the Homeland is a rural Japanese town. It has one of the entries that looks the most Japanese. A Wonderful Life, the original, also looks very Japanese. I mean, Friends of Mineral Town has a shrine, even, or is it a hot spring? I don't remember, but it has a very Japanese kind of
Yeah.
world that is also kind of a fictional Japanese rural town. As the games got more modernized, they also got a bit more westernized, but the older entries still have that kind of Japanese look to them. So that, honestly, the atmosphere was what I wanted to capture, which is
Also
why we
Persona.
set it in Japan. And
Yeah.
Persona, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're trying to kind of implement the yokai aspects and the
Yeah.
kami aspects of stuff into the game in the caves. It was just clear that it had to be Japan. I do regret it a tiny bit, because when you make a game in another country that you've never been to, it requires a ton of research. We could have just gone with a fictional town that whatever
Yeah.
rule we set up works in it. But because it's inspired by Japan, as fictional as we might make it to be, it still has to be faithful to some aspects. Yeah.
And even just in, I mean, the video playing right now of driving around, it was important to me that we captured the vibe of the countryside. Not even just, for one, having this big open expanse with not a lot of people living in it, because that's true. If you've ever lived in the country, that's just how it is. You've got miles and miles to your next neighbor, no matter what country you're living in. That's true. But also, for me, it was about verticality of the plant growth. So one of the things that I did, that we both did to research, was we went to Japan on Google Earth and just went down to street mode and just kind of walked around to see what things were like. We went to beach villages, we went to villages in the mountains, we went to villages next to rivers to kind of see, is there a common thread that these all share? And one of them was the verticality of the plant growth. So it was really important to me to make everything feel green as much as possible, because that's what it felt like walking around. But there were also there were a few areas that we had passed through where people were walking in the roads as the cars were driving by for Google to take pictures. And so you really got this feeling of the roads are for everybody. So that's why we didn't try to make, these are bike paths or walking paths. It's just this is what the countryside looks like. And the most gratifying thing for me has been people who are either from the countryside or who have lived there, or who have visited in Japan specifically, who have been like, this is nostalgic. This feels like home. This feels like when I went to visit. And it has that same vibe. To me, that was a win. That was all I wanted. But when you're doing a culture that's not your own, there's a very fine line between respect and offending people.
Yeah.
And that was the hardest for me personally, of how do we make sure we get in the things that reflect the culture without romanticizing it too much. So we tried to put some negative aspects in there as well, so that it was a bit more of a balanced feeling. And then I also this was a personal thing, is I didn't want to fetishize it at all. And I feel like that happens, especially in America and Canada, where we kind of there's this fetishization of Japanese culture with the clothing or with certain aspects of anime and stuff. And so I wanted to stay as far away from that as possible. So that's why there's no kimonos. There's no really traditional Japanese outfits or anything. There's some stuff that's close, but I didn't want anybody viewing the game that way. So we tried to stay away from it.
Yeah, it's tricky. Once again, it's a very ambitious thing to try to tackle a country or a culture you're not from. But I think, at least visually, I think you did a great job, because I lived in Japan for a few years as well. So seeing the countryside, you can definitely recognize, feel the Japanese countryside vibes. So I think at least visually it is pretty
There
good.
were
But
a couple there were a couple things we had to change, and the biggest one was we had to actually spread things out more. because of just video games and how cameras work.
Yeah.
So like we couldn't really do the very narrow alleys because we couldn't put the houses right next to each other
Oh, okay.
because you wouldn't be able to navigate. That was the biggest. The buildings are a lot bigger so that you could actually walk inside of them and navigate without hitting stuff. So those were the biggest changes that we were like, we're just going to have to accept this as being a part of video game development. But
or
everything
NPCs
else,
finding their ways. Yeah.
things getting pathing and all that stuff. So, but
yeah, and that's one thing that's tricky too in a farming sim, because I feel like most farming sims have really small towns where you can go everywhere very quickly.
Yeah.
But in SunnySide, there's a lot. You unlock a bicycle pretty quickly, but I noticed compared to a lot of games, you have to walk around. You have to like think about where you're gonna go because it will like take time to get to places. Yeah.
Yeah, it was for me the reason that because we could have done that where we put everything right on top of each other and had it be a lot easier on the player. But for me, it was a matter of, okay, if we're taking out the capitalism aspect, what are some other things that we can add to kind of make up for that missing? And so the how expansive the town is ended up being a time management thing. Because we couldn't do the time management through the economy, we had to do the time management through something else. So by spreading everything out, you kind of have to manage your trips into town, which for me adds to the realism of living in the countryside, because you don't just run into town every time you need something. You plan your trips like once a month because it's so far away that you have to make sure you get everything done in one go. So through my own playthroughs of testing and everything, I found myself falling into a pattern of, okay, I'm going into town. I need to prepare myself. I need to have access to everything, making sure I'm doing all my trips at once. And once you kind of get into that rhythm, you realize, okay, this is just a new way of looking at the time management aspect for a farming game, which I thought was fun, but I'm biased. So
yeah, I think it's a fun way to look at it. Honestly, there's so much in this game. I was wondering if is there one feature you're the most proud of?
Ooh, that's a good question. I am again, I'm biased for this one, but I'm pretty proud of the weather system in the game and the whole atmosphere of the game. So one thing in game development in general that really interests me is weather systems and creating like natural procedural systems, like trees growing in a certain area because there's more water in there and there's like not much somewhere else. So putting in subtle systems into the game, like a temperature system that really doesn't do anything. It's in the corner of your screen, but it gives you some indication that it's colder during winter and it's like warmer in summer. Or just the fact that in SunnySide, and this is something really subtle that a lot of people don't notice it directly, but it kind of adds to that kind of your brain just kind of clocking in the changes, and it's the fact that the sun angle changes based on the time of year. So at the start of spring, the days are much shorter, the sun is not as low to the ground. During summer, the sun is really high up, and then in winter, the sun is usually stays really low to the ground. So the shadows and the colors and everything looks very different. That's the day length is also very different. The reason at the start of spring the game is pretty dark in the mornings is because it is technically February. So it is still, and you can see snow in the mountains. And then when you get to summer, when you wake up, the sun is already out. So making systems like that, and that is something I'm really proud of. And also, especially making it work with when it rains, obviously your crops being fine. And I've seen when people run into this, it's a really fun one, especially watching streamers. If it rains the previous night, when you wake up in the morning, your crops are all watered already because it was raining the last night. So that is definitely one of the areas of the game that I had a lot of fun with, and I'm proud of. Yeah, for sure.
For me, I think it's twofold. I wouldn't really say it's a system, but for me, the map in general, I did a majority of the map work. I did all the carving, planning the rivers, the mountains, where everything can be laid out. I worked with our modeler on all the architecture and making it feel like you're in a rural town in Japan. So I'm really proud of that. It was a lot more work than I think any of us knew we were signing on for, but I think the end result definitely speaks for itself. But in terms of mechanics, for me, it's definitely the farming system, because that is the one place where we took the most risk, I think, Save for, well, I'd say I'm pretty proud of the gender system too, but
yeah,
but
for sure.
with the farming, the one thing that I've heard from people, the feedback that we've gotten is that the farming system, people come back to Sunnyside for the farming system because it's so satisfying and because it's interesting, and people learning things about plants they didn't know because we decided to put them in. Something, like garlic scapes existing that people didn't know about, or the fact that green tea and black tea are the exact same thing. It's just when you pluck tea off of the plant is what type of tea leaf you're going to get, and people don't know that.
Mm.
And so it's little things for me. If I can teach any one person or inspire any one person to go and grow something in their own backyard because they saw it in Sunnyside, that's a win for me. That's all I really wanted was to inspire people to try stuff. So really happy about the farming system.
I always love when I get to learn new things in games. So do you both garden in real life? Are both of you?
No.
No.
I do a tiny bit, but I wouldn't call it really gardening. No,
I
no.
live in Texas, and
Yeah.
for anybody who doesn't know, growing anything in Texas, especially where I'm at, is very difficult. Not just weather patterns being so crazy, but the bugs here that will come after your plants. So I've tried. I've got pictures. Very proud, putting out all my seedlings. Everything's looking good. And then after about a month, I'm losing it to thrips or mites or ants or mold or something. So I've tried, but I need to get to a better climate, I think, to actually be successful.
It's a challenge. It's a lot harder than it looks. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Because I do it to have like a balcony, so I don't have too much space. But I do grow a few things, and even though I'm high up in my building, there's still bugs and things that find their way there. I don't know how they make their way there, but they do, and it's always a challenge.
I mean, I have a
but it's
balcony
fun.
too. The only thing I've successfully grown has been cat grass.
Besides
Besides that, I've been trying to grow some night scented stalks. I think they're called, but no flowers. Because they're out of season now. So no matter how much I try, I have to wait for year 2 for them to grow into flowers for sure.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that we wanted to implement into the farming system that were like pulled from like real life gardening, but decided that we didn't want to punish the players too much. So, like bugs, for instance, I remember we had a lot of questions when we were, doing Kickstarter. And we were in the first planning stages of, are there going to be bugs? Are there going to be adverse weather effects? Are there going to be? And I was like, I don't hate you guys that much to make you have to deal with that. But there are some really cool, interesting things that we do want to experiment with, like companion planting. I don't know how much you know about that idea.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So just the idea that certain plants, the real world application is, if you put this plant next to this plant, usually it's because this plant has some kind of pest that bothers it, and this other plant will get rid of that pest. So if you put them next to each other, you have better yields on both plants. And so we didn't put in a quality system for our plants because we just thought the inventory management would be absolutely insane. Yes. People are already struggling with inventory management. We didn't want to add quality to it too. But so for us, it makes it harder to implement new things like that. But if we can find a way, I think it would be fun to have something like companion planting, or not going to do pests. That's just mean. That's not going to do that to you guys.
So we talked about your favorite parts of the game, the things you're the most proud of. Is there, I know you mentioned the caves, maybe you're not as proud of, but I was wondering if there is something you didn't like working on, something that was like frustrating to you during the development.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. Frustrating in development. Yeah, well, honestly, animal AI was pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
Because you fix one problem, they do another problem, and there's another problem. We still, as much as we've tried, there are still situations where animals can't find their way to some station to eat their food or drink the water they need to drink. So and because it's especially a problem because people create emotional bonds with these animals, so when they see them angry or upset,
Yeah.
it's extra taxing on the players. So it's not something you can say, oh, the raccoon didn't spawn, who cares. It's the fact that like, yo, my chicken isn't eating and I'm scared, I don't know what's
My
going on.
dogs hate me.
Yeah. So I think it's been pretty frustrating trying to fix and make sure that they behave as much as they should, but it just kind of by design comes with AI, and its unpredictability of what the player is going to do and how the AI is going to react. Yeah, that's the one I can think of that's also kind of funny to me. Yeah,
I think for me, the thing that I disliked the most, weirdly, was writing the romance stories.
okay.
Not, I'm not going to say I'm not proud of them, because I'm insanely proud of them, but on one end, I wish we could have done more, but we were limited in how many, because localization costs and all that stuff. We kind of had like a word budget of, we couldn't go over a certain amount because the publisher wasn't going to pay for localization. So it was like, how do I make a fulfilling romance with so few words? And I would have done 10 more scenes per romance had I could have done that. So having to like pare everything down and get those stories across in as few words as possible was just insanely difficult. And I'm glad to have had the experience of doing it, and it's made me a better writer. But at the same time, it was just awful. It was grueling. But also, I don't think we give creative people enough credit sometimes, of like, being creative is something people do as a hobby. Having to be creative on demand on a schedule is so hard. Of like, I can put all the time in the world into planning out these stories, but until you sit down and start writing them and have them like start making sense. And for me, I did all of it at once. So, and the way that I write is, I try to empathize with the character I'm writing for, so that the voice makes sense, so that everybody you're talking to doesn't sound just like me. And so the like mental gymnastics of putting yourself in this character, writing their emotions, writing out their romance, and then the next day you're going to a different character. So with Kat and Natalie, which were the first two stories that were written, they're sisters, and they complain to you about each other. And so you have the kind of relaxed, spontaneous sister and the uptight, controlling sister, and you get their own lives from them. But then you also have Kat complaining about how controlling her sister is, but Natalie doesn't feel that way about herself. She thinks that her sister is too. So you kind of get all these crazy 3D perspectives around every story. And while it was a blast to write, it was also a lot, especially for a first-time writer. So I'm really proud of it, but would not want to do it again.
Yeah, that does sound very complicated, but I'm glad you're able to make it work and create a nice, like, interactive and like immersive social system in your game. So we covered a lot of SunnySide. We'll be looking forward to updates and things like that. Do you think, I know you said you're kind of not sure how it's gonna go financially. Do you have like other projects in mind, like future games or anything you're like thinking about? Or
I'm gonna take this one because I'm gonna keep Rainy from hurting himself.
Well, it's okay. I'll just say one thing.
Okay.
I don't just do game dev as work. I also just do it as a hobby because it's fun to do. So when it's weekends or when I'm off work, I'm always working on other games. So I've got like 5 other game ideas that I'm just kind of like building upon. But for anything RainyGames wise, that'll be Sydney. Yeah. What are we doing?
For RainyGames, we've got at least 5 or 6 games that we have ideas for, that we're kind of slowly doing pre-production on, so that when we get to a point where we can start hiring more contractors, we can start figuring out, okay, what's the next one going to be? It probably won't be a cozy game. We need a break. But yeah, it's as soon as the money starts coming in, that's going to be the next step. We've also been looking at just the general idea of being like a third-party developer. So it's common for publishers to, like, they'll have the idea for the game, but they'll go looking for developers to make them. So we've kind of been toying with that idea a little bit. we definitely want to do other stuff, and SunnySide's definitely not the last stop for us. I think more than anything, it was a chance for us to learn what not to do.
Yeah.
And how to go from there. But yeah.
Is that like one main lesson you learned from SunnySide that you wouldn't do in your next game? Like, was it too ambitious, or
Keep the scope small
keep
and
a smaller scope? Yeah.
Pre-production.
Production, yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't even say that scope was an issue with SunnySide. I think Rainy and I both went into it with a dream of what we wanted it to be, and I think we stuck to that. I think in the process we got a little carried away, but we ended up rolling those ideas back. There were a couple things we probably couldn't. I think there are things that we thought we needed that we didn't realize
that we
didn't
didn't
really
need.
need.
Yeah,
and that's more so. Like with the cave system, we thought we needed to have it. And it wasn't until we started implementing, we're like, we didn't need to do this. People would have been totally okay without this. So it was kind of a misconception of what was expected of us, rather than like we had crazy scope ideas in mind.
That's a very good way to put it. Yeah, for sure.
But
yeah.
more than anything, we learned the importance of pre-production. What tripped us up the most was that we were figuring out systems as we were implementing them. And that's just not a smart way to create your pipeline. You have to do the planning ahead of time. And I think that's where a lot of games get messed up, or they'll overscope in pre-production and not know how to implement it. So that's what we learned more than anything, was like how to set up that full pipeline. And so I think when we go into the next game, we're going to be a lot more prepared.
Yeah, that's great advice. I know there's lots of aspiring game developers that watch this podcast to get like ideas and learn a little bit. So hopefully they can learn from your mistakes as well. And before we jump into our news segment, we have 3 little stories to cover. Is there anything else you would like to say to our listeners about SunnySide? Anything we did not cover yet that you'd like to share?
Thank you for giving SunnySide any sort of attention, even if it's just retweeting something or liking something. You don't have to buy the game. If you are thinking of buying the game, please do play the demo.
Play the demo first.
And if you have bought the game, please join the Discord. And this is an advertisement at all. It's just because the game is a ton more fun when you have the community besides you. And we know the game can be very confusing because of all the different approaches we took to things too. So Discord can be very good for you, and we have a wiki as well that you can use to figure out what's what. Yeah,
I think my big thing would be play the demo. I mean, make sure it runs on your computer. You know, we can't account for everybody's setups, so try the demo, make sure it works, make sure it runs well, make sure you're okay with the mechanical changes that we made. It's the first 10 days, so you get a little piece of every system, and you can kind of figure out how you're going to vibe with it.
And you can continue your save if you purchase the game. So
that's not like
I would say kind of throw all your expectations out the window and just read through everything, and please read everything. I worked really hard. Please read it. Get to the character stories. From the people who've gotten through to them, I'm being told they're very rewarding and very interesting. Not to like toot my own horn, but I am really proud.
It's a slow burn, but it's
a very slow burn, but it's worth it. But for anybody who's looking to make games, Josh, if you don't mind me plugging our podcast.
Yes.
We have it's called The Developers Den, specifically to help people learn about indie development. And so we have every other week we do an How to Indie episode of how to get into indie gaming, from figuring out pre-production for your game, figuring out budget, how to set up your company, how to sell your game, how to figure out what it's worth, all that stuff. I think we had a lawyer on at one point who talked about the legal sides of video games and stuff. I think we're 10 or 12 episodes in for that, and then every other week is gaming news, similar to what you do, but we talk about it from the game developer's point of view. So it's, we did an episode when Redfall came out, and everybody was like complaining about it and why they didn't like it. But we approached it from, okay, here's what we think might have gone wrong and why this happened the way that it did and why maybe they made these decisions. So we try to give a little insight on like the things that maybe influencers don't quite understand because you're not as entrenched in it as we are.
Yeah.
So yeah, check it out. Especially if you want to make games. We put a lot of effort into trying to help people as much as we can. So
All right. So I'll make sure to have a link to your podcast in
awesome,
the description, to your Discord. Please
Thank you. Appreciate
try
that.
the demo. Make sure you read the dialogue.
yeah.
And yeah, I'd love to maybe get some developers' insight into our first piece of news.
Yeah.
Have you played Fantasy Life on the Nintendo 3DS?
I have, yeah, I have, yeah. There was this period of time that I went through, and I got that, and I got there were a few other games as well. Obviously, Story of Seasons and Harvest Moon. I was playing Tale of Two Towns at the time more, but yeah, I played Fantasy Life, and I quite liked it. It was it had battles in it, if I remember correctly. And yeah, it reminded me more of Rune Factory than like Harvest Moon, and I really liked it. Yeah, and I actually didn't know there was another one coming out, so this was great, but also kind of sad that it got delayed.
Yes, exactly. So the first game on the 3DS, if anyone has a 3DS and they've not played that game, now you have some extra time to like go back to it, play the first game, because they are working on a new game, Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time, for the Nintendo Switch, and it was supposed to release originally last year in 2023, and it kept getting delayed.
Okay.
And everybody thought that October 10th was going to be the final release date because it's been pushed back so many times.
Yeah.
But now Level 5, the developer and publisher, just announced that they will postpone the release again, and they will reveal more details later when they do their
how much of that
one
is
of their events.
I wonder how much of that is related to the Switch 2 news.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons that could have happened. If they've already delayed a few times, my guess would be staffing. Not issues or problems, but things change. And within game development, if you lose one person who was making models, you not only have to hire somebody to take over that spot, you have to retrain them on everything that the other person did and what the art style is and figure out what their development schedule is like. And so just having to change out one person on your team can add 3 to 5 months of development time. There's also the potential of overscoping. So like if a company like this who has a lot more experience, they're doing a lot more pre-production. But the issue with that is, like we saw with Cyberpunk 2077, is you can have a ton of really great ideas in pre-production, but until you get into actually developing it, you might not know. So yeah, it could be a lot of things. They could have changed art styles halfway through, especially if they're going from an old system to a new system. How much do we want to update things? So there's a lot of stuff that could be happening. I don't think any of it's bad. But if they're not giving you a new date, to me, that says Nintendo. That says Switch 2.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Because it's been delayed so much. I'm
guess.
wondering if they're going to do like a cross release, like release it for both platforms at the same time, or just go to the
launch
next console.
title for Switch 2.
Yeah, maybe a launch title.
Yeah.
Especially if they already have a relationship with Nintendo.
And it's exclusive
it would make
to
more
Switch.
sense.
Yeah,
it would make more
a Switch
sense if they'd be
exclusive.
chosen as a launch title. I'm not saying that's exactly what's
Japanese
happen,
studio as well, so
yeah. Hopefully we get to learn more about it soon. Personally, there's just so many games releasing every month. I don't mind waiting a little bit more for this game. If that means it will be more polished, I would rather wait an extra 6 months or even an extra year. If it means that the final product will be great, because there's just so many games that release that are a little bit unfinished or need like a little bit more time.
Yeah, that's the hard part, is especially that we had to navigate that too, of like, we had Kickstarter backers who were waiting and waiting and waiting, and we started marketing way too soon. And so you run that risk of like, you're getting people hyped, but then you balance like the hype with, okay, what do we actually have finished? And then you have to figure out how to make the two work. So it's hard. It's like we were talking about with how you decide a game launch date. Maybe something big's coming out in October that we don't know about. And they wanted to avoid it, and they didn't know what would be next. There's a million things that go into that decision. So it's we found it's best to not announce it until you're like a month out.
Until you're like 100% sure. It's tough. Yeah. especially in your case because you did Kickstarter, so you can't you have to do the Kickstarter early. So like there's gonna be hype for like 3-4 years for like many years.
Yeah.
So that's tough. Yeah. Our next piece of news is also a game that was on Kickstarter. It's Solar Punk. I don't know if you've seen that game.
Oh yeah, we know about Solarpunk.
They are releasing a new trailer, so we are seeing a little bit of a sneak peek exclusive. This trailer actually releases at the day of releasing this podcast, so on the 22nd.
Cool.
So it's a brand new trailer that we're looking at right now. So if anyone's not familiar with this game, it is a first-person cozy survival crafting game where you explore you have like all these floating islands, and you just explore the islands, gather materials, build your base. It seems very cozy, very relaxing. And in this new trailer, they show a bit more gameplay. We see a bit of the farming. You can fly around in your little ship. I just love how this game looks. There's going to be multiplayer as well.
I think it's awesome. I think it looks awesome, and
I'm gonna play the heck out of this game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they showed this in the last trailer or not, but the vehicles are really cool. I don't remember that being a thing, and actually, I didn't also know that it was a multiplayer game. So that's gonna make it extra. Yeah, but that's also it's Rokoplay, right? Their publisher.
Yes.
Shout out to Rokoplay for getting the game's trailer onto Gamescom.
Yeah,
it helps. It really helps the devs. Yeah, no, it looks great. I'm definitely down to play this when it comes out.
Yeah, sure. we've been watching this one for a while because I mean, obviously we track all the farming games, right? Competition, got to keep track of people. But the solar panels and the wind turbines, which are things that we have, so we were kind of like, okay, how close are we getting to other games? Because we don't want to, cause too much competition for anybody. But it looks like they went with a watering can, so I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
But it looks like they've got some is it Factorio elements?
It gives what's that game called? Satisfactory.
Satisfactory,
yes.
That's the one. Yeah. It's and the steampunk thing is always, or solar punk is always a really good theme. People like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Raft as well. It reminds me of Raft a little bit as well.
A little bit, yeah. Raft in the sky.
I like the art style. The colors aren't so one of the things for us,
really lovely. It's really pastel.
Yeah, when we were doing SunnySide was we looked at all of the marketing images for all the other farm games, and they'll have the exact same color palette.
The cozy color palette.
We call it the cozy color palette. The very bright green, the bright blue sky, and then the very specific brown used for the dirt. And so we tried to stay away from that, and it looks like they did too. And I think they did a really good job. The color palette's great. It's nice and soft and relaxing. So
there's no release date yet, is there? No, it just says wishlist.
There is no release date. I think it will come on consoles. I think at the end of the trailer it showed it a little bit.
It says Switch.
It happening.
Yeah. It says Switch.
I can definitely
PS5,
see that
Xbox Series S and X, and Switch. Yeah.
Okay, Switch. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. I'm always a little bit skeptical when I see a new game trailer that looks as good as this and they say Switch, but we'll. Yeah.
That's a very good and smart skepticism to have.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Was SunnySide also supposed to release on the Switch at first?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not.
Yeah.
It wasn't up to us.
Yeah.
That's up to the publisher. Okay, yeah. So even we wanted to do early access, and the publisher that was something they were interested in. So it's hard for developers because you dream of those things, right? You dream of having the cozy Switch game.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is Switch is a hard platform to make for. What's the cartridge size, Rainy? 7 gigs or something?
I think so, but I mean, even more so is the fact that Switch is weaker than an iPhone.
When
it comes to graphical power. So it's actually a lot of devs do overestimate how well Switch could work. And as Sunny said, it was a publisher decision, but as far as I understand it was because of how expensive and difficult it would have been otherwise.
It would have been we could have done PlayStation and Xbox or Switch. We couldn't do
pretty much. I think so.
The cost of porting for those two platforms was less than what it would have been just to do the Switch by itself.
Yeah.
And I think the Switch would have been almost double, just because of how much work it would have taken to compress SunnySide into something so small. So yeah, it's definitely something to be wary of, especially if the developers are doing it themselves. Like Critter Crops, she did all that herself, the porting to Switch, and so it's much better port because the developer did it. But when you're using porting houses, it can go anyway. So,
yeah, it also depends on the scope of the game, right? So Critter Crops, it's a 2D game. It's a little bit more like simple in terms of performance. It's not as demanding, whereas SunnySide is quite a large game.
Yeah, but the benefit of this for Solarpunk is they don't have the NPC to worry about. Not NPC, sorry, the main character, the player character, because it's first person camera.
Right.
So you don't have to do all that extra loading of what the player character looks like and stuff. And it looks like it doesn't look like there's any NPCs either, which AI alone takes up a ton of space and processing power. So, which is going to give them more room for better liquid graphics, better weather graphics. I hope the weather is good in this. If this game doesn't have incredible weather, I'm going to be very disappointed because it should. It's
well, just from the trailer, it looks like they'll have different weather effects. And I think with your solar panels and everything, you'll have to take that into account. So it will affect the gameplay.
Yeah, same like ours. Yeah. The thing that I think with SunnySide that a lot of people don't realize is how much the weather and the shadows, the fact that we wanted that super realistic weather feeling, that's what takes up all the space. Honestly, there's so much processing power in that. And it looks like they went for something a little bit more stylized, which is going to be better for them.
I think so. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Last bit of news yesterday. So there's Gamescom going on right now. So there's just so many new game trailers and game announcements. There's a new cozy game that was announced yesterday that everybody's talking about called Flowtopia. Have you seen the trailer for this?
No,
I haven't seen the trailer. Yeah, it gives me Animal Crossing Dinkum vibes, but like with multiplayer. And I'll be very impressed if the trailer looks like actual game because it looks so good. It looks really good. Yeah.
It looks
like,
really good. It's hard to.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Though I'm seeing a theme with like
floating islands,
farming
right?
games on floating islands. Yeah, there was Moonstone Island was another one. Solarpunk went that route. This game went that route. It's like becoming a whole new genre.
There's also another one called Puff Pals, Island Skies.
Puff Pals. Yeah. It's becoming its own like thing, which is really interesting.
Yeah. It does look very beautiful. It's kind of hard to tell. I think there are a few gameplay pieces in the trailer, but most of it I think is just cutscene. I'm not too sure like which is gameplay. Like what we're seeing right now, is this gameplay or is it not? It's hard to tell. It looks very beautiful. It seems like it will be a mix of like Animal Crossing with farming. It seems like it will be multiplayer as well because you see different players, different little characters playing together.
Yeah. Who's making this?
So that's the thing. So this game is being developed by NetEase, which is a Chinese developer. And they do mostly free-to-play games. So I think this one will be free-to-play as well. I'm not too sure of the platforms. So it looks good when you look at this, when you look at the trailer, but I'm trying not to put my hopes too high because I don't know if it will be the kind of free-to-play game.
Are you worried about monetization?
Yeah, I don't know how the monetization will look like.
Yeah, I would be too. Especially what would that look like for a farming game?
Well, they could sell cosmetic stuff. They could sell the clothing stuff, some items that you can buy.
Could you imagine doing like
a battle pass?
I was gonna say, could you imagine doing like a battle pass for like what seeds you get and stuff?
Yeah.
And what crops and actually Farmville did that on Facebook. I don't know if I was a big Farmville fan, and it was like battle pass, and I hated it. It was awful because you're like, oh, I want this one like I remember there was a white tiger that I really, really wanted, but like the only way you could get it is if you had like 5 friends do something, and I was just like, hated it.
Oh, I remember that you used to like have to ask your friend to like help you in the game.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
It's just like a reminder of like, hey, you don't have friends, or if you do have friends, they don't like the same stuff that you like.
Exactly. Yeah.
But man, visually it's very striking, and you know, if there's one thing that I've seen Chinese studios do well is visuals. I mean, look at what was that Zenless something zero that came out recently, and I mean, you have
MiHoYo.
Genshin, you have MiHoYo
Yeah.
stuff, and they're all visually incredibly beautiful looking. So yeah,
I'm also
keep cautiously watching.
Yeah.
Is anyone else getting like post-apocalyptic vibes too? Like it from the way it starts, it looks like the Earth has been destroyed. So
Right.
Like,
oh right, actually,
Yeah.
it completely went over my head.
That's
yeah,
another
that's
theme
another
that's coming
thing.
back.
It's another theme, yes. But like My Time at Portia and Sandrock are post-apocalyptic, and it kind of like it's to me it's weird, this like cozy game post-apocalypse type thing. But it's interesting. I'm so particular with the graphics in the games that I play. So I don't think this would be one for me. I don't like playing things that look like kids.
Okay,
Maybe it's just because I'm too old. I don't know. So I probably wouldn't play it very much, but I could definitely see the appeal, especially playing with your friends. It does look like fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to wait a little bit for this one because there's not too much details. I don't think we know the platforms or the release date. But it seems like, yeah, I'm just a little bit worried with all the microtransactions. I can definitely see them doing a thing where you have to pay for your crops to grow faster, or to get certain outfits or
that'd ruin it. That would
ruin it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. But that was pretty much it for today. Rainy, Cindy, thank you so much for taking your time today to chat with me about SunnySide. It was so nice to get some insights into the development of your game, and hopefully the coming months and years go well for your studio and SunnySide. And
thank you so much for having us. It was absolutely a blast to have a chat about SunnySide, to also share more like from behind the scenes how things are going with us personally, and for those of you who either play SunnySide or are thinking about it, again, thank you, and we hope you enjoy the game. We know that it's not perfect, and we are going to do all that we can to make sure to improve it. But again, thank you for the time, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, we like any opportunity to talk about what inspired us or why we made decisions the way that we did, or we also just like talking about game development in general. So thanks for having us on. It gives us a nice chance to especially answer the questions that we don't really think about that people might have had.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That was such an interesting chat, and bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.